Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe, so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. Lyra pondered this for a moment. There is Dr. Corin. She is a renowned biologist specializing in interspecies physiology. She might have some insight. Dr. Corin it is, then, Ethan agreed. Dr. Corin's lab was a chaotic symphony of bubbling beakers, glowing screens, and strange contraptions that hummed with energy. The biologist herself was a small, wiry creature with iridescent scales and a pair of large, inquisitive eyes. "Ah, Lyra, my dear." Dr. Corin chirped as they entered. "And you must be Ethan. Lyra has told me all about your unique interaction." Ethan and Lyra exchanged nervous glances as Dr. Corin gestured for them to sit on a pair of bioscanning chairs. "Now, tell me everything," Dr. Corin urged, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Every detail, every sensation." Ethan and Lyra recounted their experiences, the initial touch during Professor Viner's lecture, the accidental brush in their living quarters. Dr. Corin listened intently, scribbling notes on a glowing data pad. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Absolutely fascinating. It appears that your biologies are uniquely compatible. The interaction between your species is creating a synergistic effect." "Synergistic effect?" Ethan asked, confused. "What does that mean?" "It means that the combination of your biologies is greater than the sum of their parts," Dr. Corin explained. "You are amplifying each other's energies in ways we do not yet fully understand." Lyra's eyes widened. "Could this have scientific implications?" Dr. Corin nodded enthusiastically. "Potentially, yes. This could revolutionize our understanding of interspecies relationships. It could unlock new sources of energy, new methods of healing." Ethan felt a sense of unease creeping into his mind. He hadn't signed up to be a lab rat. "So, what do we do now?" he asked cautiously. "Now, we study," Dr. Corin exclaimed. "We run tests, we gather data, we unlock the secrets of your extraordinary connection." Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Lyra became frequent visitors to Dr. Corin's lab. They underwent countless scans, answered endless questions, and participated in a series of bizarre experiments designed to measure their bioenergetic output. As they spent more time together, Ethan couldn't deny that his feelings for Lyra were growing. Her intelligence, her curiosity, and her gentle nature were incredibly appealing. But he also couldn't shake the feeling that their connection was more than just personal, that it was something that belonged to science. One evening, after a particularly grueling session in Dr. Corin's lab, Ethan and Lyra returned to their living quarters exhausted. "I don't know how much more of this I can take," Ethan groaned, collapsing onto his bed. "I feel like a lab specimen." Lyra sat beside him, her expression thoughtful. "I understand your frustration, Ethan. But this is important. We could be on the verge of a major scientific breakthrough. But at what cost?" Ethan retorted. "Are we just going to let Dr. Corin poke and prod us until we break?" Lyra's eyes flashed with anger. "That is not fair. Dr. Corin is simply trying to understand something extraordinary." "And what about us?" Ethan asked, his voice rising. "What about our feelings? Does anyone care about how we feel about all this?" Lyra stood up abruptly. "I thought you understood. I thought you were interested in learning about my culture." "I am," Ethan exclaimed. "But I'm not interested in being dissected in the name of science." A tense silence filled the room. Ethan realized he had gone too far. "Lyra, I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to upset you." Lyra turned away, her voice barely a whisper. "I need some time alone." She retreated to her side of the room, closing the privacy screen that divided their living space. Ethan sat on his bed, feeling like the biggest jerk in the galaxy. He knew he had hurt Lyra's feelings. But he couldn't help but feel trapped in a situation that was spiraling out of his control. He had come to Nexus Prime to study alien life, not to become an alien experiment. As he lay in the darkness, he wondered if he had ruined everything. Had he destroyed the fragile bond that had been forming between him and Lyra? And more importantly, had he lost his chance at something truly special? Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, the image of Lyra's retreating back seared into his mind. He knew he had messed up, big time. He had let his own anxieties and frustrations get the better of him, and in the process, he had hurt someone he genuinely cared about. He hesitated for a moment, considering whether to knock on the privacy screen and apologize. But he knew that words wouldn't be enough. He needed to show Lyra that he was serious about making things right. He decided to take a walk through the station, hoping to clear his head and come up with a plan. Nexus Prime was bustling with activity as always, but tonight, the vibrant chaos felt overwhelming. Ethan found himself drawn to the viewport at the end of the corridor, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. As he gazed at the cosmos, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. Just a few weeks ago, he had been a small-town college student with a fascination for alien life. Now, he was living on an intergalactic research station, sharing a room with an alien girl, and participating in groundbreaking scientific research. But despite all the excitement and adventure, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing himself. He had become so caught up in the science of it all that he had forgotten about the human element, the emotions, the connections, the things that truly mattered. Suddenly, the station-wide alarm blared through the corridors once again, jolting him from his thoughts. But this time, the tone was different, more urgent, more alarming. "Attention all personnel," announced the synthesized voice, its tone laced with panic. "Major containment breach detected in the station's primary reactor core. All personnel must evacuate to designated emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill." Chaos erupted throughout Nexus Prime as residents scrambled to reach the emergency shelters. The corridors filled with a cacophony of alien languages and the frantic footsteps of fleeing creatures. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. A breach in the reactor core could be catastrophic, potentially destroying the entire station. He knew he had to find Lyra. He raced back to their living quarters, ignoring the throng of panicked residents. As he approached their room, he saw that the privacy screen was still closed. "Lyra," he shouted, pounding on the screen. "Lyra, we have to go. There's a breach in the reactor core." After a moment of agonizing silence, the screen slid open. Lyra stood there, her eyes wide with fear. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The reactor core is failing," Ethan explained urgently. "We have to evacuate." Lyra nodded, grabbing her belongings. As they rushed out of their room and into the crowded corridor, Ethan noticed that her skin was glowing more intensely than ever. "What's wrong?" he asked, concerned. "I don't know," she replied, her voice strained. "I feel a surge of energy. Like something is pulling me." Ethan frowned. He had a bad feeling about this. As they made their way toward the nearest emergency shelter, they were stopped by Captain Rylak, a gruff, battle-hardened officer in charge of station security. "Carter, Solen," Rylak barked. "We need your help. We've detected an energy surge emanating from the reactor core. It's interfering with the containment field." Ethan exchanged a worried glance with Lyra. "What do you want us to do?" "Dr. Corrin believes that your unique connection may be able to stabilize the field," Rylak explained. "You need to get to the control room and try to dampen the surge." Ethan's heart sank. The control room was located directly above the reactor core, the most dangerous place on the station. "Are you crazy?" he exclaimed. "We'll be killed." "We don't have a choice," Rylak said grimly. "If we can't stabilize the containment field, the entire station is doomed." Ethan looked at Lyra, who nodded resolutely. "We'll do it," she said. Rylak led them through the chaotic corridors toward the reactor control room. As they approached the core, Ethan could feel the heat intensifying, the air crackling with energy. When they finally reached the control room, they found it in disarray. Alarms blared, consoles sparked, and engineers frantically tried to regain control of the failing containment field. "Carter, Solen, get to the central console," Rylak ordered. "Dr. Corrin has uploaded the necessary protocols. Good luck." Ethan and Lyra made their way to the central console, ignoring the chaos around them. The console displayed a complex schematic of the reactor core, with a pulsating red energy signature at its center. "What do we do?" Ethan asked, overwhelmed by the complexity of the controls. "Dr. Corrin said that we need to focus our energy," Lyra explained. "We need to create a harmonious resonance to counteract the surge." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. He reached out and took Lyra's hand. As their skin touched, a familiar jolt of energy surged through him. But this time, it was different, more powerful, more intense. He could feel Lyra's energy merging with his, creating a vibrant, pulsating field. "Focus, Ethan," Lyra said, her voice a soft whisper. "Focus on the energy. Feel it flowing through you." Ethan closed his eyes, concentrating on the energy that coursed through his veins. He could feel Lyra's presence beside him, her touch grounding him, guiding him. Together, they began to manipulate the controls, adjusting the energy flow, fine-tuning the resonance. The red energy signature on the console began to flicker, then stabilize. The alarms gradually subsided as the containment field strengthened. The engineers in the control room cheered with relief. "They're doing it," Rylak exclaimed, a rare smile spreading across his face. "They're actually doing it." After what seemed like an eternity, the energy surge finally subsided. The reactor core was stable, the crisis averted. Ethan and Lyra collapsed onto the floor, exhausted but elated. They had done it. They had saved Nexus Prime. As they lay there, catching their breath, Ethan realized something profound. Their connection wasn't just a scientific anomaly, it was a source of incredible power. And it was also the foundation of something truly special between them. With the reactor core stabilized and the station safe once more, the residents of Nexus Prime began to breathe a collective sigh of relief. The emergency shelters emptied, the corridors filled with the sounds of celebration, and life slowly returned to normal. Ethan and Lyra emerged from the reactor control room, exhausted but triumphant. Captain Rylak clapped them on the back, a rare show of emotion from the stoic security officer. "You two saved us all," Rylak said, his voice gruff but sincere. "You have the gratitude of the entire station." Ethan and Lyra exchanged a weary smile. They had faced death together, and in doing so, they had forged a bond that was stronger than ever. As they walked back to their living quarters, hand in hand, the station seemed to shimmer around them. The alien landscapes, the bustling crowds, the endless expanse of stars, it all felt different now, somehow more vibrant, more alive. When they finally reached their room, they collapsed onto their beds, too tired to even speak. They lay there for a long time, side by side, simply enjoying each other's presence. Eventually, Ethan broke the silence. "So," he said softly, "what happens now?" Lyra turned to him, her teal eyes filled with a mixture of exhaustion and affection. "I do not know, Ethan. But I do know that I am grateful to have shared this experience with you." Ethan reached out and took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "Me too, Lyra. Me too." They lay there for a while longer, their hands clasped tightly together, their hearts filled with unspoken emotions. Finally, Ethan sat up, a determined look on his face. "Lyra," he said, his voice serious, "I need to tell you something." Lyra sat up as well, her eyes fixed on his. "What is it, Ethan?" Ethan took a deep breath, gathering his courage. I think I'm falling in love with you." Lyra's eyes widened, her silver skin flushing slightly. Love, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. But, that is a complex human emotion. I do not know if I am capable of. Ethan reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands. Lyra, he said softly, you are the most intelligent, the most compassionate, the most extraordinary being I have ever met. I know that our cultures are different, that our biologies are different, but none of that matters to me. All that matters is you. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, her emotions swirling within her like a nebula. Ethan, she said, her voice choked with emotion, I feel something for you too. Something that I cannot explain, something that is both exhilarating and terrifying. Ethan smiled, his heart soaring. Then maybe, he said, we can figure it out together. He leaned in and gently kissed her. The kiss was soft, tentative, but filled with a profound sense of connection. As their lips met, a familiar jolt of energy surged through them, stronger than ever before. Their skin began to glow, their bodies resonating with a shared energy. In that moment, they weren't just human and alien. They were two souls, bound together by a force that transcended species, culture, and even the vastness of space. Weeks turned into months, and Ethan and Lyra's relationship continued to blossom. They spent their days exploring Nexus Prime, learning about each other's cultures, and working alongside Dr. Corrin in her lab. They discovered that their unique connection had a profound impact on their scientific research. They were able to develop new technologies, unlock new sources of energy, and even create new forms of life. But more importantly, they learned that their love was a force for good in the universe. They inspired others to embrace diversity, to overcome prejudice, and to find common ground despite their differences. One day, as they were walking through the station's botanical gardens, Lyra stopped and turned to Ethan, her eyes shining with happiness. Ethan, she said, I have been thinking about our future. Ethan smiled, his heart filled with anticipation. And what does our future hold, my love? Lyra took his hand, her touch sending a familiar jolt of energy through him. I want us to explore the galaxy together, she said. I want us to travel to my home world, and to Earth, and to every corner of the universe. I want us to share our love with all those we meet. Ethan squeezed her hand tightly. That sounds like the perfect adventure, he said. And so, they set off on their journey, two souls bound by stars, ready to face whatever challenges the universe might throw their way. They knew that their love would be tested, that they would face prejudice and misunderstanding, but they also knew that their connection was strong enough to overcome anything. As they boarded their starship and set course for the unknown, Ethan couldn't help but smile. He had come to Nexus Prime in search of alien life, but he had found something far more precious, a love that transcended all boundaries, a love that would last for eternity.